The scream came just before dawn, a sound so raw it tore through the silence of the desert like a bullet through canvas. Taza dropped the water pail in the dust, his pulse pounding as he sprinted toward the barn. Inside, the scent of hay and blood mingled in the cold morning air. His boots crunched on the wooden floorboards until he found her Marjorie collapsed beside the old Mare's stall, her pale hands clutching at her chest, eyes wide with pain and something else, fear. "Marjorie!" he shouted, dropping to his knees. Her breathing came in ragged gasps, every inhale a fight. She tried to speak, but only a whisper escaped her lips, something that sounded like "not him." "Please," before she convulsed.taza. The tall Apache ranch hand with storm-dark eyes and long black hair tied back in leather lifted her gently. She was 30, strong once. He'd seen her haul water barrels heavier than she looked, but now her skin was clammy and cold. He pressed his ear to her chest. Her heart fluttered like a dying bird. "Who did this?" he asked, his voice trembling with restrained fury. Her fingers twitched, brushing against a folded scrap of paper beneath her body. When he pulled it free, he saw blood smeared across its edges. It wasn't a letter, it was a torn piece of a ledger from the ranch's office. Numbers. Names. A signature he recognized. Jacob Brandt, the ranch owner. Taza's jaw tightened. He'd worked under Brandt for 3 years, quiet, loyal, never trusted, but tolerated. Marjorie had been the housemaid, the one person on the ranch who treated Taza like a man, not a servant. And now she lay dying at his feet, whispering warnings about someone powerful enough to make her afraid. He lifted her into his arms and carried her toward the light breaking over the hills, dust swirling in the cold air. Her lips moved again, faintly. "They'll kill you, too." The words died as her eyes rolled back. Outside, the ranch yard was waking up, roosters crowing, men gathering saddles, but when they saw Taza carrying her, everything stopped. No one spoke. Not even Brandt's son, who stared at the blood on Taza's hands with a mix of shock and accusation. "She's hurt," Taza said sharply. "Fetch the doctor." But the men hesitated. One spat. Another muttered, "He's the one with her in the barn." Taza froze. The stares burned into his back, fear, suspicion, contempt. He could feel the lie forming before it was even spoken. "She needs help," he growled again, but Jacob Brandt stepped from the porch, his coat draped over his shoulders, eyes cold as winter. "What's going on here?" Brandt asked. His gaze shifted to Marjorie, her limp arm, her bloodied dress, and then to Taza. "You brought her out of my barn?" Taza nodded silently. "Then tell me," Brandt said slowly, his voice low and dangerous. "Why are you covered in her blood?" The men around them murmured. "She's been poisoned," Taza said. "She tried to tell me something before she fell." Brandt raised a brow. "Poisoned or something else?" He turned to his men. "Take him to the shed. We'll let the sheriff decide what happened." Taza felt the world tilt. He looked at Marjorie, her pale face, her trembling fingers, and then at the ranch house. Somewhere inside that ledger, inside those numbers and names, was the truth. But the truth was something this town didn't want an Apache to find out as they dragged him away. Marjorie's voice echoed in his mind, weak, trembling, full of warning. "Not him, please." And for the first time in years, Taza felt fear, not for himself, but for what that message meant. Because if she wasn't talking about him, then who was she begging for mercy from? The cell behind the tool shed was nothing more than a stall with an iron latch, but it might as well have been a grave. Taza sat on the dirt floor, wrists bound, listening to the thud of boots outside and the low murmur of men deciding his fate. The morning wind carried the smell of manure and smoke, too calm for the storm gathering inside him. He wasn't thinking about his bruises or the dried blood on his arms. He was thinking about the piece of paper he'd hidden in his boot, the torn ledger page Marjorie had clutched before she collapsed. Numbers, dates, and one signature. Jacob Brandt. A familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. Taza, he looked up. It was Dr. Elias Moore, the only man in the town who treated him like he wasn't invisible. The doctor's face was tight with worry. He opened the latch and stepped inside. They said you found her in the barn, Moore said quietly. Tell me what happened. Taza told him everything. The scream, the blood, the whisper about someone she feared. Moore listened, his hands trembling slightly. She's alive, the doctor finally said, but barely. There's something wrong with her body. Her skin's gone gray, her pupils pinpricked. I think she was poisoned. Poisoned, Taza repeated, the word like iron in his mouth. I took a sample from her cup in the kitchen, Moore went on. Smells faintly of almond. Cyanide, most likely. Taza's eyes darkened. You'll tell the sheriff, then? The doctor hesitated. The sheriff's at Brandt's poker table most nights. He won't cross him. Taza rose slowly, towering even in the small space. Then I will. Moore gripped his arm. Don't be a fool. They'll hang you before you get a word out. Outside, the creak of the barn door echoed. Brandt's voice carried across the yard, smooth and commanding. Bring him out. The law's comin'. 2 men entered with rifles ready. Taza clenched his jaw but didn't resist. As they dragged him into the sunlight, he saw Marjorie's body being carried toward the doctor's buggy covered with a quilt. She's not dead, Taza shouted. She was breathing. Brandt glanced at the buggy, expression unreadable. Not anymore. The words hit Taza like a hammer. His chest burned. The doctor's eyes widened. He hadn't said she was dead yet. Brandt turned to the men. This Apache's got blood all over him and a story that don't make sense. Sheriff'll settle it when he rides in. But before the men could shove Taza into the wagon, something slipped from his boot and fell into the dust, the ledger scrap. Brandt bent down and picked it up. When he saw what it was, his face went hard, the color draining. He crumpled it quickly and tucked it into his coat pocket. Where did you get this? He hissed. Taza's eyes burned into him. From under Marjorie's hand. For the first time, Brandt looked shaken. His grip on the paper trembled, though his voice stayed cold. You think you know something? You don't know a damn thing. Then tell me why she was afraid of you, Taza said, his voice low but steady. Her last words, not him. You know who she meant. Brandt's jaw flexed. Careful, boy. You're one word from a noose. Before Taza could answer, the doctor stepped forward. Mr. Brandt, if she was poisoned, we need to investigate. Brandt cut him off. You'll do no such thing. He turned to his men. Take the Indian back inside. But this time, Taza didn't move easily. He shoved one man aside and grabbed the other's rifle, the motion swift and desperate. The stock cracked against the second man's arm before he could raise it. The yard exploded and shouts. Taza bolted for the corral, dodging a bullet that splintered a post beside him. The pain in his shoulder from a grazing shot barely slowed him. He leapt onto the nearest horse, a gray Mustang, and kicked it hard. Taza! Moore shouted. Where are you going? Find the truth, Taza called back, dust rising behind him as he disappeared into the desert. Brandt's voice thundered across the ranch yard. Bring him back. Dead or alive. As the sound of hoofs faded into the canyon, the doctor looked toward the barn where Marjorie's quilt-covered body had been taken. His hands were still trembling, because he knew Taza was right. The poison hadn't come from the barn. It had come from inside the house. The desert swallowed Taza whole. Wind tore at his hair as he rode hard through the canyons, the gray Mustang's hooves pounding against the red earth. Behind him, faint echoes of pursuit faded into the distance, Brant's men shouting, rifles cracking. But the land was Apache land, and Taza knew every shadow, every stone that hid the truth from strangers. When the sun began to burn low, he dismounted beneath a jutting cliff. The Mustang's breath steamed in the cooling air as Taza crouched by a small fire, opening the wound on his shoulder with a heated knife tip. He didn't flinch. Pain was a language he'd spoken all his life. But anger was something new. Marjorie's face haunted him. Her trembling lips, her plea, the paper she'd hidden with her dying breath. The ledger, what had she found that made Brant kill her? He still saw Brant's expression when he picked up that page shock first, then fury. Whatever was written there had power. Taza leaned back against the rocks and opened a small pouch at his belt. Inside was a scrap he'd torn from the ledger before Brant could take it all. It was faint, blood-stained, but legible enough to read 2 lines. Shipment, Silver Creek Mine, June 2nd. Destination, Tucson Ordnance Depot. A mine. A government depot. And a date that matched the week the ranch payroll had vanished. He frowned. Brant wasn't just running cattle. He was smuggling. The fire crackled softly. Taza's mind churned with memories of Marjorie's kindness. How she'd leave bread by the barn door. How she'd whisper, "You deserve more than this place." Maybe she'd found the same ledger. Maybe she'd tried to expose Brant, and he'd silenced her before she could speak. A coyote howled in the distance. Taza rose and scattered the fire with his boot. He couldn't stay long. The canyon walls hid eye scouts, mercenaries, even bounty hunters. He needed proof, not just suspicion. He headed south toward Silver Creek Mine. By midnight, the wind turned cold and bitter. Taza's horse climbed the final ridge overlooking the abandoned mine. But it wasn't abandoned. Down below, lanterns glimmered like scattered stars. He counted at least 6 men, maybe more. Wagons stood loaded under the moonlight crates stacked high and stamped with the U.S. Army. Seal, gunpowder, ammunition. Taza's gut twisted. Brant was selling stolen weapons, probably trading with outlaws across the border. If the Army found out, Brant would hang. If Taza brought proof, he'd finally have justice for Marjorie. He crept closer, keeping low along the rocks. 2 men guarded the lower gate, their breath misting in the cold. One was drunk, laughing. Brant said no witnesses this time. That maid started talking. Won't be making that mistake again. The words cut like a blade. Taza moved before he thought. His hand shot forward and a stone struck the first man's skull with a dull crack. The second barely had time to draw his pistol before Taza's arm wrapped around his throat, silencing him in the dark dot when both lay still. Taza took a lantern and slipped inside the mine. The air was thick with dust and the smell of oil. Crates lined the tunnel walls, some marked ore, others stamped Tucson. He broke one open with the butt of a revolver. Inside rifles, cartridges, and Army-issue dynamite. He found a ledger too, open on a makeshift desk. The handwriting matched Brant's. Dozens of entries listed deliveries, bribes, and shipments disguised as ranch supplies. Taza took the book and tucked it under his belt. He was about to leave when a voice echoed behind him. "Well, I'll be damned," said a cold drawl. "Didn't think you'd make it this far, Apache." Brant stepped out of the shadows, a shotgun leveled at Taza's chest. His coat flapped in the cave's wind like the wings of a black bird. "You should have run farther," Brant said. "Now I've got to bury 2 secrets instead of 1. Taza didn't move. "You killed her." "Because she found this." He tapped the ledger at his waist. Brant sneered. "She was soft. Thought she could outsmart me. You think anyone's gonna believe an Indian over me?" "Truth don't care who says it," Taza said. His voice steady. Brant cocked the shotgun. "Maybe not, but the people with guns do." He pulled the trigger, but Taza dove aside. The blast lit the tunnel with fire. Splinters flew as dynamite crates shuddered, one fuse catching the edge of a spark. Taza saw it and froze. The fuse burned fast. Brant saw it too. His face twisted in horror. Taza sprinted for the exit, grabbing the ledger. He leapt onto his horse just as the mine behind him exploded, lighting up the canyon in a burst of orange and thunder. The night sky swallowed the flames as he rode away, the sound of falling rock echoing for miles. Behind him, Silver Creek burned, and with it, every sin Jacob Brant ever tried to bury. By the time Taza reached the edge of Clearwater, dawn was breaking over the plains. The town still slept beneath a soft veil of dust and silence, but to him the place felt poisoned, every shadow heavy with deceit. His horse stumbled, exhausted, and Taza slid off, clutching the leather pouch under his arm that held the ledger from the mine. Proof, the truth Marjorie had died for. He tied the horse outside the doctor's office and slipped through the back door. Dr. Elias Moore sat at his desk, head in his hands, a bottle of whiskey beside him. When he looked up, his eyes widened in disbelief. "Taza," he whispered, standing. "You're alive?" "Alive enough," Taza rasped. His voice was hoarse from dust and smoke. "Brant's mine wasn't for silver. He's been stealing army weapons, trading them for gold." Moore's face paled. "Dear God." Taza placed the ledger on the desk. "This is proof. Names, dates, everything. But he's still out there." Before Moore could reply, the sound of hoofbeats echoed down the street. Through the window, Taza saw the sheriff's star glinting in the morning sun. 5 riders. Brant among them. Moore's eyes widened. "He said you killed Marjorie and blew up his mine. He's telling everyone you were running contraband." Taza's fists tightened. "Then I need to end this now." Moore grabbed his arm. "No. You'll never make it out alive." But it was too late. The door burst open and Sheriff Grady stepped inside, his badge catching the light. He was a broad man with a lazy confidence that came from siding with power. "Well, I'll be damned," he said. The Indian still breathing. Behind him, Jacob Brant entered, coat spotless, expression calm, too calm. "There he is, Sheriff. The murderer, the thief, the traitor." Taza met Brant's eyes. "You think burning your mine will bury the truth?" Brant smiled thinly. "What truth?" "You destroyed government property, killed good men, and ran off with my payroll. Everyone saw you flee." Moore stepped forward, trembling. "That's a lie. I've seen the ledger." "Quiet, Doctor," Brant snapped. "We all know you've been friendly with the savage." The sheriff looked at Taza. "You got anything to say before I take you in?" Taza slowly reached into his belt pouch, pulling out the ledger. "Only this." He placed it on the table, open to the page marked Silver Creek Mine. Brant's eyes flickered, only for a second, but it was enough. "Look closer, Sheriff," Taza said. Brant's name, his men. Every shipment accounted for. He's the one robbing the government. Sheriff Grady glanced over the page, lips moving as he read. Taza could see confusion, even hesitation. But Brant's voice broke through like oil over water. "You gonna trust that over my word?" Brant said. "Over a known criminal's scribbles? He probably forged it. Hell, he doesn't even know how to read." Laughter rippled among the deputies. Taza didn't flinch. Moore slammed his hand on the desk. "Enough. I examined the handwriting myself. This is Brant's ledger." The sheriff turned to him slowly. "Then you won't mind repeating that in court?" "I'll swear it under oath," Moore said. Brant's face hardened. "You won't live that long, Elias." The tension cracked. Taza moved first, grabbing the lantern from the desk and smashing it against the floor. Flames leapt up, licking the wood. Men shouted and stumbled back as smoke filled the room. Taza seized Moore by the arm. "Run! They burst through the back door as gunfire erupted behind them. The alley filled with dust and the smell of burning oil. Horses neighed wildly. Taza ducked behind a water trough and fired back, hitting the hat off one deputy. "Go!" he shouted, shoving Moore toward the stables. "Get to the canyon." "What about you?" Moore gasped. "I'll find you," Taza said. Though he knew it might be a lie, he mounted the gray Mustang again just as Brant emerged from the smoke, revolver gleaming. "You can't run from me forever, Apache." Taza turned the horse sharply, eyes cold. "I'm not running," he said. "I'm coming for you." Then he was gone, galloping through the burning streets as the town erupted in chaos. Behind him, Brant's furious voice rose over the flames. "Bring him back dead or alive." Taza rode hard into the open desert, the sun rising like fire over the horizon. He didn't know if he'd see another dawn, but he knew one thing: Marjorie's death would not be in vain. The truth was out now, and Brant's lies were beginning to burn out as the wind whipped through his hair and the canyon stretched ahead. Taza whispered to the morning sky, "For you, Marjorie." For the truth. And somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like the promise of vengeance. The canyon wind carried the scent of rain and smoke as Taza led Dr. Moore through the narrow pass, the moon their only light. The gray Mustang snorted nervously, hooves slipping on shale. Behind them, far across the plains, the glow of Clearwater still burned, flames licking the sky like the ghosts of every lie Jacob Brant had ever told. "Keep low," Taza murmured. "They'll follow until dawn." Moore stumbled over a rock, clutching his satchel. "I'm not made for running," he gasped. "Then you better learn," Taza said quietly. "They'll kill anyone who stands between Brant and the truth." They reached a hidden hollow in the canyon wall, a natural cave shielded by boulders. Inside, Taza built a small fire, enough to warm but not enough to smoke. Moore sank to the ground, breathing hard. "Taza," he said, staring into the flickering flame, "you could have left me. Why risk your life for a man like me?" Taza sat across from him, his expression unreadable. "Because you believed her," he said. "Marjorie." The doctor nodded slowly. "She tried to tell me something once. About Brant's accounts. She said there was a name in the books that shouldn't have been there." Taza leaned forward. "Whose name?" Moore hesitated. "I didn't see it myself, but she mentioned a woman. Said the money was being sent under that name to Tucson every month. She thought Brant was hiding someone." The fire crackled. Taza's brow furrowed. "A woman?" Moore nodded. "She said it was someone from his past. Someone who knew too much." Before Taza could respond, a faint sound echoed outside, hooves, distant but closing. He grabbed his rifle and moved silently to the cave mouth. The night was still except for the whisper of wind over rock. Then voices. "There." One called. "Tracks lead up the ridge." Taza turned back to Moore. "They found us." The doctor's face went pale. "What do we do?" Taza's lips pressed into a thin line. "We make them regret it." He guided Moore deeper into the cave and took position behind a fallen boulder near the entrance. Moments later, torchlight flickered against the canyon walls. Brant's men dismounted, 4 of them, rifles ready. "Search the cave," one ordered. When the first man stepped inside, Taza struck, grabbing him by the collar and driving him into the wall. The man's rifle clattered, and before the others could react, Taza fired once. The echo rolled through the canyon like thunder. The remaining 3 ducked for cover, returning fire. Bullets sparked off stone, filling the cave with smoke and dust. Taza moved like a shadow, fast and silent, reloading between flashes of gunfire. One outlaw crawled along the wall, thinking he'd flank him. Taza waited until he saw the shadow move, then drove his knife into the man's side with a brutal twist. 2 left. Moore cried, Stay down." Taza shouted. He dove behind another rock as a shot grazed his ribs. Pain seared his side, but he gritted his teeth and fired back once, twice. A scream echoed, then silence. When the last man fled, leaving his torch behind, Taza waited until the night swallowed the sound of retreating hooves. Only then did he lower his rifle. Moore crawled from behind the boulder, shaking. You saved us again." Taza wiped the blood from his knife. "No, they'll send more." He walked to the fallen man nearest the cave mouth, searching his coat. Inside was a sealed envelope stamped Tucson Post Office. The name on it made his stomach turn. Marjorie Ellsworth. He stared at the envelope, the firelight trembling across his face. "She was supposed to be dead," he murmured. Moore took the letter, examining the seal. "What in heaven's name?" Taza tore it open. Inside was a bank draft and a short note written in Brandt's hand. Payment for silence. "Do not return." The doctor swallowed hard. "So, she wasn't just a maid." "No," Taza said, voice low. "She was someone Brandt paid to disappear. Maybe his wife. Maybe worse." Moore looked up sharply. "If she came back and found out he was still dealing in weapons, he poisoned her to finish what he started," Taza finished. His tone grim. The wind outside grew stronger, whistling through the canyon like a warning. Moore looked at him. "What now?" Taza tightened his grip on the rifle. "Now we take this to Tucson. Someone there was getting Brandt's money. Someone who can tell us who Marjorie really was." As the fire flickered out, Taza stepped into the cold desert night, the letter in his hand glowing faintly under the moon. The truth wasn't buried in Clearwater anymore. It waited in Tucson, and Taza intended to dig it up, no matter who he had to face to find it. The wind howled through the cracks of the barn as if the plains themselves mourned her passing. Taza knelt beside the still form of Evelyn, the woman whose frail hands had once trembled with both fear and kindness. Her last breath lingered in the cold air, mingling with the scent of hay and blood. His eyes, dark as obsidian and heavy with grief, didn't blink. The Apache warrior had seen death many times, but this was different. This was truth dying before it could finish its sentence. Her final words still echoed in his ears. "In the chest? You'll know why." Taza reached for the small wooden box buried under straw. The hinges creaked as he pried it open, revealing a handful of gold coins, a child's faded drawing, and a sealed letter with his name written in English letters, shaky and faint. He froze. His name, Taza, written by her hand. The barn lantern flickered, shadows crawling across the walls as he unfolded the letter. "To the one I wronged most, you were never meant to suffer. Your mother was no thief. She was promised safety and love. I was told to keep quiet or lose everything. But when I saw you again, grown, proud, alive, I could no longer bear the lie. You are not the son of a stranger. You are the blood of this ranch, of the man who hides behind my husband's name. He killed your mother to bury the secret and branded her as a traitor. Forgive me? I had no strength to fight him then." Taza's heart pounded. The letter trembled in his hands. The man who had ordered his capture, the ranch owner, Thomas Granger, was his father. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the barn for a brief, blinding moment. Then came the sound of hooves in the distance. The ranchmen were returning, torches burning through the rain. Taza stood, his bare chest streaked with mud and grief, and slipped the letter into a leather pouch hanging from his waist. Evelyn's words had changed everything. This was no longer about vengeance. It was about blood, legacy, and truth buried beneath the weight of lies. He covered her with his cloak, whispering softly in Apache, "May your spirit walk free." As the first torchlight pierced the darkness, Taza vanished into the storm. By dawn, Red Creek Ridge was silent again, save for the cries of mourning from the ranch house. The doctor had found Evelyn's body and declared it a tragic accident. The story spread fast, just as Thomas Granger intended, but Taza was not far. He sat upon a rocky ledge overlooking the ranch, his long black hair whipping in the wind, the bone necklace on his chest catching the sunrise. His Mustang grazed nearby, snorting softly in the chill air. In his hand, he held the drawing from the chest, a small child's sketch of a woman and of a woman and of a baby standing beside the Granger ranch house, his jaw clenched. She had kept his mother alive, even in memory. From the hill, he saw Thomas Granger walking near the corral, barking orders at the workers, pretending life was normal. But Taza knew the truth, and he would not let it stay buried. He tightened the leather strap around his wrist, the one his mother had made for him when he was a boy. The leather had aged, just as he had, but both still carried the same fire. "I am not your enemy," he whispered toward the wind, "but you made me one." He mounted his horse and turned toward the rising sun. The road ahead stretched long and dangerous, but now he rode with purpose. He would uncover every lie, every betrayal, until his mother's name was cleared out as he disappeared into the horizon. The wind carried the faint scent of rain and ashes, the mark of a storm still brewing over the Old West. Somewhere, deep in the ranch house, Thomas Granger felt a chill crawl down his spine. He didn't know why, but he would soon, because Taza was coming home. The rain had washed the world clean, but not Taza's heart. The storm was gone, yet thunder still echoed inside him as he rode down from the ridges at dawn. The plains stretched wide and golden, the sky streaked with red fire. He had buried Evelyn beneath the cottonwoods by the creek, wrapping her in her own shawl. Now there was only one thing left to do: finish what she could not dot by midday. He reached Granger Ranch. The land sprawled like a kingdom, white fences, red barns, windmill creaking slow in the heat. Workers moved like ghosts, silent under Thomas Granger's rule. The ranch house stood at the center, proud and cruel. Its windows shuttered tight as if it feared the sun itself. Taza dismounted his Mustang and walked, barefoot, silent. His bronze chest glistened with sweat, tribal jewelry clinking faintly with each step. He carried no rifle, only his hunting knife and the letter his proof, his weapon stronger than any bullet. The men at the gate froze when they saw him. "Sweet Lord?" one muttered. "He's back." Before anyone could react, Taza was already inside the yard. The dogs barked and strained at their chains. The horses reared in their stalls, as if the earth itself recognized the blood returning home. Thomas Granger stepped onto the porch, his revolver already drawn. The man looked older than before, eyes shadowed, face pale. He pointed the gun, but his hand trembled. "You should have stayed gone," Granger said. "I would have," Taza replied, his voice low and steady, "if she hadn't told me the truth." The ranch hands whispered behind their master. Granger's face twitched. "What truth?" "That you killed my mother, and made the world believe she stole from you." Granger's jaw tightened. "Your mother betrayed this land. She loved you," Taza interrupted, his voice rising with the wind. "And you loved her. Evelyn wrote it all. The child she hid, the lies you made her keep." He tossed the crumpled letter onto the porch. The wind unfolded it at Granger's boots. The man stared down, face draining of color. "She said you were my father," Taza said. "That the blood you despise runs in my veins." A hush fell over the ranch yard. Even the wind stopped. Granger's hand shook as he raised the gun again. "You're lying." Taza took a step closer. "Then shoot me. Kill your own son like you killed his mother." For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then bang. The gun fired. Taza staggered, but only dust rose at his feet. Granger had missed. His old hands trembled too much. The men around them gasped. Granger dropped the revolver, breathing heavy. His knees buckled, and he fell onto the porch steps. "I didn't mean to. She wanted to leave. She said she'd take you away." His voice cracked, breaking beneath years of rot and regret. Taza stepped forward slowly, knelt before him, and laid the letter on his lap. The truth always finds its way home. He turned to the ranch hands. "She didn't die a thief. Tell the town. Tell her name right." No one moved against him. No one dared. Taza mounted his Mustang again, the sunrise burning gold behind him. He didn't look back as the ranch grew smaller, swallowed by distance and dust. He wasn't riding for vengeance anymore, he was riding for peace. For her. By noon, he reached the ridge where the land met the horizon. He stopped and looked once more toward the valley. He could see the faint outline of the ranch house, smoke rising from its chimney like a ghost trying to climb to heaven. He took out the drawing, the one of the woman and child, and tied it to his horse's saddle. The wind tugged at it gently. Then he whispered, "Mother, it's done." The Mustang reared, and the sound of its hooves echoed across the canyon, scattering crows from the trees. As he rode into the blazing light of the west, his silhouette merged with the rising sun, half man, half memory. And by the time the wind carried his name across the plains, it wasn't the name of a fugitive anymore. It was the name of a son reclaimed by truth and a warrior set free by love.